Bruce Fealk. Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm awesome. It's beautiful here in Madison, Wisconsin.
You're in Madison, that's right. You were a part of the election exit polling group, right? Or what did you exactly do over there?
We were doing election defense with the Election Defense Alliance, actually, and I was at a poll in Waukesha County, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of by now, because that's where the infamous 7,000 votes showed up in the Supreme Court race here.
Oh, okay.
So we were one of those polling places. I was there from 6:30 in the morning till the polls closed, and then we were counting exit surveys at a restaurant for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, and
Wow.
there was a huge turnout, obviously.
So describe from when you got there, I mean, all the way through this thing, the energy, the enthusiasm, what all was the atmosphere like?
Well, I mean, it was a huge turnout. You know, from the moment the polls opened, as far as I assume you're talking about the elections that happened,
Yes.
the recall elections that happened here. Yeah, there was a huge turnout. I mean, from the time the polls opened at 7 o'clock, it was steady all throughout the day. I think the precinct we were working had about 3,000 registered voters, and we had well over 50% show up for an August recall election. So it was highly energized. We were in a very Republican area, because that's where some of the problems have been, and I think there were some problems this time, but the Democrats have chosen not to move forward with any complaints, because Kathy Nicholas, the county clerk here, that found the infamous 7,000 votes last time.
Oh.
She has a bit of a reputation for finding votes and having election irregularities.
She has them hidden under the rug or something. She can find.
I think she has them in her bathroom, and she just lifts them out whenever she needs them.
Wow. Hey, I was wondering, was that a record then for an election as far as the turnout?
I don't. This is really. There's nothing to measure it against, because there's never been. First of all, there's never been 6 recalls.
Right.
At one time, so there's really nothing to compare it to.
Well, you can compare it to a normal election. I mean, I
really don't know if it was a record or not. They were talking about 70 to 80% turnout. I haven't heard any numbers as far as what the actual turnout was. We had well over 50%. I know that because we got over 700 exit surveys done. We had 935 people that didn't talk to us. So that's about 1,600, and I'm sure there were, probably even more people than that that voted. So,
well, Bruce, you belong to an interesting organization called ALEC. Can you tell us about that and why it's important?
Well, first of all, I don't belong to the organization. I want to be really clear about that.
What does it stand for?
It's a group that I've been tracking, though. ALEC that stands for the American Legislative Exchange Council, and what ALEC is a group of legislators and business CEOs, high-level business types. They are probably lobbyists, although they claim not to be a lobbying organization. They're very clear about that, because they have a tax-free status with the IRS, which means they cannot be a lobbying group. But to me, they do something much more evil, if you will, than lobbying, in that they just had their annual meeting down in New Orleans, and I was there for that. There was a protest down there. But they bring together corporate CEOs, and sometimes they're lobbyists. They bring together over 2,000 legislators who were down in New Orleans, and they just they write what they call model legislation. So a lot of us have seen, there's no coincidence that you've seen a lot of the same legislation being introduced across the country at the same time, practically, affecting the same issues. And labor's been a big target, obviously, of these right-wing, far extreme pieces of legislation that we've been seeing, happen in Michigan, happen in Wisconsin, Ohio, New Jersey, Florida, pretty much everywhere where you have what they call a trifecta, where the Republicans have all 3 branches of government.
Well, what are some of the names of the companies and Michigan legislators that are involved with this anyway?
Well, Walmart is one. Obviously, they're not very labor friendly.
Yeah.
And big pharma is involved. I mean, you name a segment of our economy that is the biggest segments of our economy are all represented. Whether it's insurance, whether it's big drug companies, health insurance companies, you name it, they are represented for on every level. And they the reason I say they're worse than lobbyists is because they're actually sitting down and writing this this model legislation.
Oh, okay. Wow. So what's the biggest issue facing the Michigan workers as far as, at this moment when we're talking about right to work and how does ALEC or this association play?
Right to work is next up in Michigan.
Yep. Right to freeload. Yep.
Yeah, and so that's coming up next, and they've got. In fact, one of the things is there's a bill for that. You name the issue, and there's a bill for that. They've got a right to work bill that's coming up, and they call their one of them anyway is the Right to Work Act, and I'm just reading right off their website here. ALEC's model Right to Work Act provides that no employee need join or pay dues to a union or refrain from joining a union as a condition of employment. The Act establishes penalties and remedies for violations of the Act's provisions. So they're coming after, they've been coming after workers in a big way.
Well, what should we be on the lookout for as this thing unfolds?
Well, I think, first of all, there's a new website. I was down in Cincinnati in April. They had one of their task forces. They have 9 task forces, they call them, and the people that chair those task forces met in Cincinnati in April. And they actually determine what model legislation they're going to be talking about at their annual meeting, which just happened in New Orleans last week. So you're going to see, that's where they decide, what are we going to target next.
Mm-hmm. Well, besides right to work, what other nasty things do you think they can come up with?
Well, they've been very busy. Obviously, they have voter rights is a big one. And here in Wisconsin, they just passed a voter. And Governor Walker signed it, a bill that's going to have severe implications for voter rights. And they've done the same thing. I think it was I forget where Sam Brown back in Kansas. They just passed probably the most restrictive voter ID law in the country. Here in Wisconsin, there was recently. Actually, we had a press conference in New Orleans about ALEC, and there was a mom who took her son to the DMV, which is the Department of Motor Vehicles here, where they register to vote. And she went in. Not only did he have to show his driver's license and those kinds of things that are becoming kind of the norm, he had to show a bank statement. Not only did he have to show a bank statement, he had to show he had enough activity on his bank statement to prove that he was a resident of Wisconsin.
Wow.
So
what's happening to democracy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really bizarre. I mean, these people. I mean, I'm hoping your listeners go to the website alecexposed.org. Back in April, after the protest down there, we had a whistleblower come forward, and we don't know who the person is. I still don't know. But they gave us inside information, so we actually have access now to all. There were over 800 pieces of model legislation on just about every issue, from the environment to health care to voter ID, worker rights, you name it. And pretty much, I mean, I was in the Wisconsin Joint Senate Finance Committee hearing when they were discussing the voter ID bill. And, the Democrats are, but every single member, there were 14 Republicans and 2 Democrats on that committee. And every single Republican on that committee is a member of ALEC.
Wow. So their intentions or their mission would be what?
Well, they want to privatize pretty much everything. In fact, in Michigan, Tom McMillan, who's my state rep, although he won't be under the redistricting that just got signed, but he introduced a law, something like the Corporate, Non-Competition Act or some name like that, which I've compared to an ALEC bill, and it's not word for word, but the ideas are the same. And that bill actually would make it illegal for government to do anything, virtually anything that could be done by private industry. He had some teachers. He has a town hall meeting every month, and he had a few teachers that were concerned because the MEA had said it could lead to the privatization of our public schools and teachers. And he said, "Oh, no, it's just I just want to make it so that public golf courses can't compete with private golf courses." And there's one county in Michigan that has a asphalt paving processing plan. He didn't think that was fair. But really, it could be used for anything. Whether it's teachers, whether it's prisons. Prisons is another big area. And there's a guy that I know from Indiana, Bob Sloan. He's been writing a lot about the privatization of prisons. not only privatizing prisons, but using prison labor to supplant, good labor, union jobs. So they're using prison labor at 23 cents an hour to supplant people making a good living wage.
Wow. So you have the prisoners watching the prisoners, maybe, or
Oh,
No, not that.
not quite
hostile takeover.
not going that far, huh?
Well, but making wiring harnesses for F-16 fighter planes, for instance.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Things that private industry and good union labor should be doing. These are the things they have prisoners doing in some of our prisons in Michigan and other prisons across the country.
So to keep an eye on this thing, Bruce, is to you can punch up alecexposed.org.
Well, that's the site where we have a lot of the articles that have been written.
Okay.
Since that site went up, there have been probably at least 100 articles that have appeared in different publications. The Nation has written a series of articles about ALEC and some of the things that they've been doing, even the Wall Street Journal. But what's interesting that you'll see is the mainstream media, the corporate media, especially television, has not been following this story. And this is just a theory, but my theory is that because ALEC involves all of these big corporations that provide advertising dollars for the television networks, is they don't want to put any of these stories out about ALEC because what would happen? Their advertising revenue would probably dry up because they would say, you're going to do those negative stories about us and ALEC? We're not going to advertise with you anymore.
Oh, okay. So,
shame on them. Why should they be afraid?
Well, that's a good question. They are very afraid. We just at the annual meeting down in New Orleans, they were actually kicking out reporters. In fact, one reporter got roughed up by some of the security. They had private security. They were on the second level of the hotel. It was at a Marriott. They actually had private security and New Orleans police, and they were kicking reporters out. Al Jazeera could not get credentialed. I certainly couldn't get credentialed to be covering their events, and but they're not used to having all this exposure. They've been used to be operating in secret, and now everything's pretty much out there, and they don't like it a lot.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'm concerned about this whole, and I guess maybe I'm naive, but that truth in media is gone. It's now truth in media as long as it doesn't affect my advertising.
Right.
I mean,
And that brings us back to what Terry was talking about, networking. We have to network because they're not getting the truth off the TVs.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, they're certainly not getting this story. I mean, what's happened too, and it's really concerning to me, is pretty much every commentator on MSNBC has done one story. Rachel Maddow did a story, Lawrence O'Donnell did a story, Ed Schultz did a story, Reverend Sharpton did a story, and you know what? They do one story, and that's usually as many as they get, because I'm not sure, I can't prove this, but I think what's happening is after they do their one story, they're getting called in the office and saying, look, their bosses are saying, look, you do another story on that, you're out of here. I mean, I can't prove that, but it's very suspicious that they get to do one story. And Ed Schultz said he was going to follow up. I haven't seen one follow-up story, even from Ed Schultz. And this is a major story, because if you think, they throw around the word fascism with President Obama all the time. But this is really what we're looking at is a fascist society, because this is really the confluence of government and corporate entities.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bruce Fealk, we're glad that you called in today. Educate us on what's going on. We have to have you back on the show, okay?
I'd be glad to be. Oh, and I wanted, before I leave,
go ahead,
real quick. I want to remind people there's another show in Detroit that you can get online. It's called The Tony Show. The First Shift with Tony Trupiano. He focuses a lot on labor issues, so I hope that in addition to listening to your show, that they'll also listen to Tony.
We will. That's a great idea, and we can catch him online. I'm assuming the station won't go this far, but he's on TonyShow.org or .com.
Yeah, the TonyShow.org, and then there's a Listen Live button.
Oh, okay.
They have a stream that people can listen to anyway. I mean, and they're also on iHeartRadio, so if they want to listen on their phones, their smartphones, they can do that too.
And they can find us over here in case they want to talk to us. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bruce.
Okay. Thanks.
Have a good day. Thank you for calling in.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.